Welcome. You're listening to The Weather Lounge, a podcast by WeatherWorks. Get ready to explore the world of weather and connect with engaging guests, bringing you fun and thought-provoking stories of just how weather shapes our lives, sometimes in ways you've never imagined. So, join us as we unravel the mysteries of the atmosphere. Today's episode starts right now.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to the Weather Lounge. I'm your host, meteorologist Brad Miller, and our podcast comes to you from our WeatherWorks headquarters here in Hackettstown, New Jersey. And joining me again in the Weather Lounge is fellow WeatherWorks meteorologist Jen Diorio. Hello there, Jen.
Hey there, Brad. Good to be here on the podcast, and signs of spring are definitely in the air.
Yeah, it's been kind of a slow process here in the Northeast. I mean, we'll get a couple nice days and a couple chilly days, but, it's that time of the year, but, whether you live in the Northeast or the Midwest, there's always that thought in the back of a meteorologist's mind is like, are we done with snow?
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, it can still snow into the spring across many parts of the country, but plenty other weather happens this time of year as well. So in honor of April Fool's Day, let's talk about that in today's podcast.
Yes, that's right. Today is April Fool's Day, isn't it?
It is indeed.
I have to pull a joke on somebody. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But it's definitely a transition time. We all know that. No matter where you live, I think maybe the only thing you can't see this time of year is a hurricane, maybe. But
true.
I wouldn't. Not this year, but who knows? Maybe one of these years we'll get a tropical system in April. Although I think we've had a few before, but not, of course, impacting the
Nothing
Northeast.
Major, yeah.
We're going to need some help with this one, Jen. So you know what? Let's bring in our producer and another fellow WeatherWorks meteorologist, Mike Priante, to chat along with us. Hey there, Mike.
Welcome, guys. Welcome in to the April Fool's Day podcast.
Yes.
Actually, April Fools, we're not doing an episode today. I brought you guys in for no reason.
Oh, okay. Well,
All right, see you later.
I got some other stuff.
Sorry, guys. No episode today. But actually, no, we're going to be talking about some fun podcast topics here about April Fools. Mother Nature doesn't fool around with the weather.
Wow.
Despite what others have to say about it. You guys
Mike,
like that?
Mike Mahalik would be proud of you right now.
I know he would. He would be proud of me saying those kind of jokes. But no, I mean, I think, this episode we're going to be going into a little bit of, sort of number one, the origin of April Fool's Day, and then kind of going into the weather side of things because, April 1st, there's been a lot of activity on that day, spanning not just the past couple of years, but going back into history. There's actually some pretty interesting things. So I'm pretty excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even thought about going back and looking how it all started. So give us a little explanation there, Mike.
Well, first off, there's no number one this is when April Fool's Day started. There's a lot of those. Well, I said this or they said this, so there's a lot of disputed claims. But the earliest potentially known time for April Fool's Day wasn't even really a day, but more so just a reference from, if you go back to, this is all back toward the Middle Ages and early European history. Geoffrey Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales. Anyone remember that? Reading that in high school? Yeah. So there was one of the short stories called in the Nun's Priest's Tale. It's one of those within the Canterbury Tales. The character, I think I'm pronouncing this right. If I'm not, then I apologize to all of the scholars out there. Chanticleer, I think that's how you pronounce the guy's name. He's tricked by a fox in the story. And in the story, he says, since March began, a full 30 days and two, which basically is saying March has 32 days. As you know, it doesn't. There's 34 days. Geez, now I'm adding two more. There's 31 days in March. And then, of course, the 32nd is actually April 1st. So the assumption in the story is that, the person was a fool to believe that there are 32 days. But realistically, what actually happened was, and there's some theories to this, is that actually they were discussing in the tale not the 32nd day of March, but 32 days after March, which would actually be at the end of April. even into early May. I think it would be May 1st. So there might have been some manuscript translation errors, I think, is what this all boils down to. But that's one potential origin of April Fool's Day, was that one story. But I think the main thing here is that a lot of this takes place, like a lot of the early origin stories are during early European history, because the next potential mention was actually in 1508 by a French poet, Aloy de Amival, and he referred to people. I guess he referred to a kind of a coined term, Poisson d'Avril, which means April fish or April Fool. So again, I think there's a lot of things that could transpire as the first thing of April Fool's Day. But what's pretty certain about this day, guys, is that people like pulling pranks. It's the prank holiday, for so to speak.
What's that show out there? That show that's always on, the prankster one.
Which show? There's a lot of shows about
Yeah, there's
pranks.
a lot. Like,
Yeah, no, there's that one when they prank each other and they make each other say different
oh, and
lines.
Practical Jokers.
Yeah, and Practical Jokers. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's really funny. Yeah.
I remember as a kid though, I used to pull like April Fool's jokes on my parents and stuff. Like I'd do
Well,
funny things.
it's funny because it's actually become such a cultural phenomenon, because you even see companies and, like, in like Google usually does April.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's
Kind of
something
really
that's
can't take social media too. You can't take anything you read super seriously.
yeah. Well, I mean, anything on the internet, Jen, you just got to take with a
This
grain
is
of
true.
salt.
This is
Remember,
true.
nothing on the internet, despite what you might hear, the internet is not all true.
This
Now,
is
I know
true.
this might be like a shocker to people, but yeah, the internet is not always true.
Extra grain of salt
Not
on.
even weather models.
Oh, come on, Brad.
When the GFS shows a snowstorm 12 days away, it's not real.
Oh, yeah, well,
It's on the internet, Mike.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it has to be true. It's gonna
You could
hit
do
my
a whole
backyard.
podcast episode on this. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But no, I mean, April Fool's Day, always a fun day. But I mean, as we're gonna learn in a little bit, about potential big events that have happened on April Fool's Day that people probably thought, is this a joke? Because it was one of these things where, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's one of these things where, something happens and it's like, oh, you know, am I dreaming? Is this real? But no, Mother Nature doesn't fool around, and things like these, weather events happen. So
All right. Well, that's very interesting, and I like the French names you use there. Poet Eloy de
Yeah, you said it very
Emerald.
well. Very
Did
Why,
you take
impressive.
thank
French
you.
in like high school or college, Mike?
No, not at all. I did go to France though, for the Olympics, so maybe I
Oh,
picked
okay.
it
There
up
you go. Pick something
there.
up there.
So
I
it
was
kind
in
of
Yeah.
France
rolled off
last
your
year as
tongue.
well.
Well, I've never well, that's a lie. I actually did speak a little bit of French when I was there, because I had to learn a little bit of it to talk to people there. But besides that, yeah, no, I don't speak French at all in general. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was a harder one to learn. That's why I took Spanish all through high school and
well,
college.
Spanish is easier, that's for sure.
Yeah,
It's one of the easier
definitely.
languages to learn, I think, of out of any. Well, besides English, I guess English is English easy? I don't know, because I'm
For
an English
us, it
speaker.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, with that, I think I'll kick us off into, kind of our first notable April Fool's Day weather event.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the April Fool's Day blizzard, which happened March 31st through April 1st of 1997. I was not alive yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I
don't
was.
say that.
year before I was alive. So Mike's not that old either for our listeners
Well,
here.
no,
But
I know that, but like, I mean, look, I know Brad's probably here, like,
Yeah, I was alive.
these two hooligans.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
All right. So anyway, so a low pressure system formed over the Ohio River Valley and moved east across the Mid Atlantic. It initially started out as some rain, but as it hit the water, it began to go through rapid intensification, or turning into a bomb cyclone, which is a big word that I feel like we hear a lot of lately with our
Overused.
winter storms. Yeah, sometimes overused, exactly. High pressure over southern Canada also allowed some cold air to funnel in um, to the south as well. So the combination of the cold air coming from the north funneling south, plus the bomb intensification, caused the rain to flip over to a steady heavy snow on the northwest side of the storm. And what that resulted in was some pretty decent snowfall for a good chunk of the region, specifically Massachusetts and the Boston metro. So just to set the scene, the day before this storm arrived, Boston recorded a high temperature of 63 degrees. Um, then on the 31st, started out as some rain before switching over to that snow, and it was a heavy, wet snow. Had reports of 3 inch per hour rates, which is very heavy and intense. Along with that, there was thunder snow as well, which is pretty cool. And kind of makes sense for this time of the year, to be honest, because this is the time of the year when we start to get some of that energy available for thunder and lightning. With this storm, Boston picked up 25.4 inches, which is crazy. That's compared to the prior 26.5 inches from the whole season. So, really, a significant amount of snow fell with this storm, in that area. And some places saw 3 feet. So, pretty intense storm.
Yeah, I mean it's an impressive storm to say the least, even if it was like in January. But I think to make matters worse, it's like a slap in the face after what, a high of 63 you said the day before.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
One thing that I read that was funny too was, well, maybe not funny then, but funny now. A lot of people put their plows away, which obviously makes
No,
sense.
I can imagine.
But hardware stores had all outdoor patio furniture and all summer things out, and then had to switch it back to shovels, and then re-switch it back after the storm passed through. Um, so yeah, it's definitely quite the storm, that's for sure.
I think it's interesting that they picked up that much snow. I mean, 26 inches versus 24. I mean, yeah, 26 for a season for some places, that's either normal or above normal. Of course, Boston's average is much more, thanks to, of course, all the big snowstorms they've had in the past 10, 15 years. But to see 25 inches from one storm in general, that's insane. And to happen in April,
Like Brad said, that would be impressive in January, 25 inches.
yeah, and to happen in April, like that's even more impressive. So I don't blame people putting away their plows. I mean, at that point, you got to think, hey, maybe there could be snow. Of course, up in New England, though, you can never be too sure. You can always snow through May, and we did an episode about that too, about the late season snow. So it can snow all the way through May, and some places out west in like the Rockies can snow until June.
Oh yeah, well elevation, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Colorado, they've gotten CSTs from us into mid-June in the Rockies, so yeah.
Insane.
I remember a
Absolutely
couple years
insane.
ago, what was it, the year of COVID, that May, Mother's Day weekend, we had flurries and some snow showers. I mean, it didn't really stick much, but
Yeah, that was actually my couch graduation from Penn State because of COVID.
jeez.
Couch graduation. I like that.
Yeah, it was freezing,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, we had I mean, even on Long Island, flurrying pretty decently. It was cold.
Yeah, it was everywhere. It wasn't just elevation there. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
having flurries everywhere. That was crazy. But yeah, you get those right patterns and setups. I mean,
it can
sure
happen.
enough.
Yeah. Now on the opposite side, guys, of snow, there could be severe weather.
Yeah. So this wasn't that long ago. Just 2 years ago. I remember this kind of distinctly. And Mike, you probably remember even more so because you forecast for South Jersey.
Oh, I do. Now I wasn't working the afternoon and evening that day, so I missed out on, well, missed out. I certainly wasn't in the fray of all of the contacting clients for these storms. And of course, it happened on April 1st, so you got to think, getting a text about a tornado on April 1st, like, if you didn't know any better, you'd be like, what are you joking? But no, I mean, it was heavily advertised that day that there was going to be a tornado, a potential for tornadoes with the storms during the daytime. And I think there was a tornado watch during that day. So, getting a text that there's a warning, at first you think, yeah, but then you realize with the context, okay, this is actually serious. So yeah, that was actually a pretty potent system. It was a storm, and it developed a low pressure over New England. There was kind of a cold front stretching down, into the mid-Atlantic, and there was a pretty hefty line of storms, more of like a squall line that developed. And as that moved through, it really started to really get its act together. And there's a lot of widespread down, line wind damage, so straight line winds. But really, the one thing that really made this day kind of more impactful and notable was, of course, the tornadoes. It resulted in nine tornadoes, or I'm sorry, 10 tornadoes during the entire day. Seven
And
of
that was just in New
those,
Jersey, right?
well, no, that's in general. 7 tornadoes hit New Jersey.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So 3 of them, I think one of them was in Maryland. I think 2 were in PA. But yeah, so nine or 10 tornadoes that day. 7 of them were in New Jersey, which was the highest amount of tornadoes in a single day in the state, which since actually it tied the record. The other record was back in November of 1989. So yeah, it's insane. 5 of those tornadoes came from a single supercell thunderstorm that started in PA and it made its way into central Jersey. And we're talking like classic Midwest supercell. Like if you looked at the radar, you could see like the hook echo. It was pretty crazy. Some of these were EF2s as well. I mean, a lot of them were EF1s, but EF2s, the one in central Jersey was an EF2. The one notable storm, which was unrelated to the line of storms, it was actually just a single cellular supercell, was down in Delaware. And that one, unfortunately, caused a fatality, but it ended up being rated an EF3.
Jeez,
I remember that very
Which is
vividly.
insane.
Yep.
Insane for
maximum winds of 140 miles an hour. That actually was the first EF3, or sorry, the second EF3 ever recorded, or I guess technically, I guess there were F3s back then, but either way, it was the second rated EF or F3 storm since 1950 in the state.
And in April.
And in April.
Kind of like how Brad was saying, that would be impressive. That snow any time of the year.
Oh yeah. This is April we're talking
EF3
about.
in Delaware would be impressive any time of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously in the Midwest and the South, they get their tornado seasons like peaking March to like June, but like for us, a tornado in March or April is very, 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 unusual. But also it was unfortunately, the first fatality in Delaware since 1983 as well. So a lot of firsts, unfortunately, across the area, and it was a very active day. But there's one thing that's for certain is that Mother Nature did not fool anybody. Everyone was well aware of the outbreak, and we did a good job forecasting it. And of course, hopefully, the word was put out that hey, today's not a day to fool around or just say no, we're not gonna get any storms. No, there were storms. They were advertised, and they happened.
that was a crazy day, and that was the day after all the other tornadoes broke out. Was it March 31st? Pretty much the same system, but
Oh, it was the same system. Yeah, the same system that moved across the West.
yeah, but again, that wasn't April 1st. But yeah, that created like 115, I think, tornadoes. I mean, it's just a crazy. And if it's funny, you look at the map and you see like the gap between the daytime where it hit all across the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, and nighttime there wasn't much going on. It's not really known for nocturnal tornadoes here in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic. But then once you got into the new day, which was April 1st, the all the components came together for an afternoon outbreak there. But boy, oh boy, that was I just can't believe that was already 2 years ago. That's nuts. I can't remember what the winter was like that year. It was kind of a mildish winter, I believe, for most of the area.
2023, I think it was. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Not that it really has anything to do with it. Yeah, it's just the setup was ripe anyway. Either way, it just was perfect setup. Yeah. So then we'll go back a few years, and there was another outbreak. This one was actually on April 1st and 2nd. This was a Great Plains tornado outbreak. Now, the same thing happened like a day later, which was a super outbreak that occurred in the Ohio Valley, which was more like April 3rd. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But the actual April Fool's one part of this system, um, it was more so back into Mississippi, or I should say back into Kentucky and Alabama, Illinois, and this one spawned 23 tornadoes, and 19 of those were actually on April Fool's Day. Again, 1974. There was widespread straight line winds, gust over 70 miles per hour. 3 of the tornadoes from that outbreak were rated EF3, or I guess F3 back then, and it caused almost $4 million in damages, which would today equate to $24 million in damages. But that same system, like I said, also produced the Xenia, Ohio tornado a day later, where the outbreak kind of moved east into the Ohio Valley, and that was the one that just basically wiped them off the map. Unfortunately, it was probably one of the strongest tornadoes I think that had ever happened at that point in the U.S.
Do you want to hear a fun fact about that tornado?
Yeah, sure.
So my dad went to the University of Dayton for his undergrad.
Oh, wow.
And he was there when that tornado happened. And stupidly, he says it now, stupidly, him and his roommates went to the top of their like dorm like high rise and watched it.
Oh my gosh.
And then got yelled at by, I don't know, staff or whatever, like,
Oh,
you shouldn't
yeah.
be up here. So they watched it, whatever, and then they went to the town afterwards and just like drove through, saw all the destruction. And they said, well, I obviously didn't talk to his roommates, but my dad said, like, it was very like just surreal kind of driving through all that. And they came across a dog that was, stranded, and like took him into their, where they lived and kind of kept him and named him Toto.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, because they were trying to like find who he belonged to, couldn't find, and so they just kept him, and that was their dog in college, and yeah, that was Toto.
Huh.
So, but yeah, top of the apartment, apartment dorm building, watching it, not the best idea. I was
No.
like,
I
oh
mean,
my
let's be
God.
honest. I mean, I probably would have that same thought.
But
Just be like, I
nighttime
wanna see- I
tornadoes
wanna
are
see it.
scary.
Yeah.
I mean, not that they're not scary probably during the day. I've never seen one either, but I wouldn't. I mean, nighttime ones, you couldn't really see it, unless you have the lightning, obviously, or radar. But I just that's I don't know why that, even though I'm a meteorologist and I love weather, I love all types of weather, for some reason a nighttime tornado setup
No,
just
I
always
agree.
spooks me. Yeah, I just it's the one thing I never ever I want to deal with. I don't think, but
Or rain wrapped.
Well,
that's true.
yes.
That's true too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
rain wrapped tornadoes are not your friend. You can't see where they are. You can't see where they're going. All you just see is just wind and rain.
Yeah, and and also on that Xenia, Ohio one, I think, I'm not positive, was that the first radar? Was that the first supercell ever seen on radar? I for some
Oh,
reason
I'm
that
not
sticks in
sure.
my head that was. You could if you there's images out there of the radar, and you can see the supercell and the hook echo of the Xenia, Ohio tornado. It's just something to look up in Google, but it's pretty cool to see a radar like that. It's not like your typical radar today, where you have your big scan, and it's not moving. That's the thing. There was no motion radar back then. It was just a still image. You would see it move every couple new scan, but you couldn't put it into motion like you can today. So kind of tough to figure out which way it was going, but yeah, if you look on Google, you could see that radar image. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that had to be crazy out there with that system. So again, that was April 3rd when it hit Xenia, but yeah, the system itself was April 1st and 2nd further out in the Midwest.
Yeah, and it was a smaller one, but I mean, it certainly caused damage.
Right.
So I'm certain that on that day people were thinking, is this a joke? Of course, April 1st, but no, it's never a joke in the Midwest or the South.
No, not in late March, early April. Yeah, that's the areas. We already had a couple outbreaks this year already, and it's always down the southeast and the Midwest and the plains that sweet spot this time of year. Get all the chasers going, and and probably really doesn't end until sometime late May. That severe weather season ends around those areas.
Yep, exactly. So I think that kind of takes us to our last weather-related phenomenon that we're going to talk about for April 1st. That's, notable at least. I'm sure there's been others, but April 1st, 2008, the Upper Peninsula in Michigan got quite the snowstorm. Um, it moved through. It was a large system, much of the northern Midwest on April Fool's Day. Um, it brought 8 to 10 inches to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and in Marquette County, Michigan, 18 to 24 inches fell. So another, pretty big storm, heavy wet snow that was obviously, difficult to remove and shovel and whatnot. That again, would be impressive any time of the year, but April 1st, really, really crazy to see.
Yeah, I mean they always get snow in Michigan, but yeah, as you said, April 1st, it's one of those days, and certainly over a foot of snow or even 2 feet of snow is nothing to cry about, even in the regular winter season. So certainly one of those anomalous days. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, obviously April 1st can have winter, can have severe. I mean, you name it. I mean, it could have it all. And even on the non-weather side, the one of the biggest earthquakes that's ever hit, I believe Alaska, was on April 1st. In 1946. Now, I don't know if it was the biggest in the state. I mean, it technically developed off the Aleutian Islands, but it also occurred on April 1st, so just not a good day. It was an 8.6 magnitude quake that struck off the Aleutian Islands, and it caused millions of dollars in damages. It led to 160 plus fatalities. A lot of those came from a resulting tsunami that developed. That and it pretty much went across the Pacific, and there were a lot of islands, not just Hawaii, but there are other small islands, and of course, unfortunately, led to all those
Oh,
fatalities.
Hawaii got in on the
Hawaii got in
tsunami.
on it. Yeah, there's images of people actually running away from the waves in Hilo. So, but yeah, it was a crazy crazy event. And again, this is back in the 40s. So not great. But again, April 1st has all weather and non-weather surprises.
And another, I guess, not a weather event, but the first weather satellite was available on April 1st, going all the way back to 1960. It was launched by NASA on April 1st and weighed 270 pounds and had two TV cameras and video recorders. And it was in operation for only about 78 days, though, before it was decommissioned. But it was able to send back almost 19,000 satellite photos of the Earth's cloud cover, and it was orbiting at about 450 miles above the surface. And I, I guess that was like the Tyros 1, I guess it was called before
Tyros 1,
Tyros 1, right?
television infrared observation satellite. And this was kind of a response, but this was during the space race, so
Yeah,
this
with
was right after
Russia.
Sputnik. So the U.S. was really trying to get satellites into space to beat the at the time the USSR. So this is one of those achievements that they kind of got. I mean, obviously they were able to see the Earth, but it was more so a marvel for weather forecasting because they were able to get to kind of get closer images of satellite of just cloud cover. Because a lot of the images at the time were, they might have had like a really big view of like the Earth, but it was grainy, it was far away, it wasn't anything crazy. This was more of a close-up view. Now, it wasn't black and white. If you look at the image online, it is not like the best image, but you can just make out it's over one of the images is over Nova Scotia. You can make out the kind of the landmass and the cloud cover. So really cool, and certainly we've come a long way since that image.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when did GOES start? Anyone know? Like,
The
when did the
70s, I
GOES
think.
70s?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Goes 1 was like I gotta look it up now. I think Goes 1 was released in the 70s. That was released on launch date 1975. Goes 1. and now we're at goes 17, 18.
Yeah, something like
No,
that. Well, now it just
goes.
goes east and west, though, right?
Well,
Or is
no.
it?
So what happens is they actually release them by letter now. I think goes
Oh, okay, yeah,
R
yeah.
was the last one that was released, but once they go into orbit, they are given a number. And then from there, they're either designated as goes east or west. So they're designated based on like if they make it to orbit, they get like if let's say one goes up and it unfortunately gets lost or it implodes. It doesn't get a number. Unfortunately, it won't get a number. So goes one was, I guess, not goes one. It was just goes, and then it ended up being the first one. Then goes two came along, and I don't know if it was goes A, but it got its number when it got up and it was operational. Um, so there's some fun satellite tidbits for you.
I think what we also have as an interesting, um, kind of weather thing, but more of just temperature related from an April Fool's Day is on April 1st, 2021. We've had both the warmest April Fool's Day recorded in locations and the coldest. So we'll start with the warmest. In Tacna, Arizona, they hold the record for the hottest April Fool's Day in the U.S., receiving a high of 99 degrees. Average highs for that time of year in Arizona are in the low to mid 80s. Then on the flip side, and not that far away, if I might add, the coldest April Fool's Day in the U.S. goes to Peter Sinks, Utah. They fell to negative 14 degrees. This location typically sets records as one of the coldest spots in the lower 48, which I actually was unaware of.
Yeah, I've read about them before. They always have like the coldest temperature almost daily. It's like it's a weird area, isn't it?
Where is it in Utah?
I
Do you
think
know?
it's in southern Utah actually, but
Okay.
it's in such a valley. It's the
Okay.
cold air just pools there every night, and
Well,
it's
who is this Peter Sinks?
yeah.
This guy, Peter
That's the
Sinks.
real question.
That is the real question. I gotta find him and ask him some questions. Why does he make it so cold out there? Um, but no, some interesting facts there. And I guess I'll end this off here with kind of a last thing that's weather related, but again, not a weather fact or not really a weather event. Back, just for some context here, there is a man named Sir Francis Galton, and he was pretty much a very smart guy. I mean, he was at the time, this is back in the mid to late 1800s. Weather forecasting back then was very primitive compared to what it is now. A lot of it was more just charts and, using a lot of, barometers, balloon launches, a lot of things that were just very primitive. We didn't have satellite, we didn't have radar, models didn't exist, that is for sure. So a lot of it was very kind of hands-on, looking at local observations, reading pressure changes. He was one of the first people to really utilize maps and to not just utilize maps, but to use it in like a public forecasting setting. Because before that, people didn't really look at maps for weather. They just were like told, like, okay, tomorrow it's going to be 65 degrees and pressure is going to change and it's going to be potential for rain. And it was all listed. And usually in newspapers, it was listed, kind of more numerically. He was the first one, and this was back in April 1st, so maybe people thought it was a joke. 1875, in the London Times, they released one of the first weather maps, and it didn't show the future. It showed like what happened the prior day. So it was more, you know, analyzing observations and then coming up with a map. So it wasn't really like a model map of forecast. It was just kind of like a prior forecast showing high, low pressure and showing kind of the dips of where the pressure troughs were and also temperature changes as well. So it was really cool to see that in the newspaper because at the time, like I said, there was really no visual weather like piece in the newspaper. It was all just numbers and facts. So he really led the way to that. And now, I mean, learning about the weather and not seeing something visually is almost unheard of. I mean, usually you see radar, you see maps. I mean, it's hard not to see something weather related that's not an image. maybe a temperature, but I mean, you kind of want to see, okay, what does it look like outside? Is the satellite clear? It's just hard nowadays to just get that around your head. Like, hey, back then all they had were numbers. They didn't have any visual images, to look at.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings us to a situation that occurred in Galveston a few years later, in 1899, when the big Galveston hurricane hit. And now there's disputed reports about this, and I always was kind of fascinated with this. But one of the meteorologists that worked at the time, the weather office there, if you will, his name was Isaac or Joseph Klein, and apparently his brother or something was riding by horseback up and down the beach and going to like all the homes there, warning them about a hurricane that was going to hit Galveston the next day. And this is like September 8th, 1899. And of course, we know that hurricane basically wiped them off the map, unfortunately, at the time. But yeah, it was kind of. I was doing some research on this a while ago. I don't know why I just thought about it, but also there was a Cuban meteorologist after it went through Cuba that was saying it was going to hit the central coast of Texas a few days later, and he was right. So I don't know how people forecasted back then. I don't know how they could have like done all that. It's just crazy.
If I don't know if you guys have ever read it, but Isaac Storm, really good book that goes into the whole Galveston hurricane and Joseph Klein and how he kind of predicted it. And a lot of it was like, how people make the joke now, like go outside, lick their finger, put it in the air, like which way is the wind blowing? He did like, not that he did exactly that, but a lot of things related to that. Um, and yeah, highly recommended book.
I'll have to check that out.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the rock, the weather rock. Isn't it? The rock is wet, it's raining. The rock
Yes.
is white, it's snowing. If the rock is gone, it's windy or something.
Yeah. I'll bring you a copy, Brad. I have two. I bought it for myself, and then
Oh,
someone
cool.
bought it for me.
Yeah, when we have our spring weather seminar for WeatherWorks, we all get together a couple times a year. That's coming up here in a few weeks for us.
Yeah, I'll bring a copy for the office. Can
Go
pass it
into
around.
spring here. All right, well, one last tidbit, because I kind of wanted to get to this a long time ago when we did our Northeast snowstorms, memorable Northeast snowstorms. We kind of ran out of time. I kind of wanted to talk, we were talking about the snow flurries on Mother's Day in 2020. I think it happened again a couple years later, too. But we all talked about this earlier, that it could snow like in the Rockies, of course, all the way into June. But for like the normal parts of the Northeast, New England, even the Mid-Atlantic, one storm, actually two, I guess, stick out um, for the latest kind of snowstorm that you would get, and not just like a snow shower or something, but back on May 10th in 1945, May 10th, Albany got 5.4 inches of snow. At that time, it was the largest May snowstorm to date. There were 60,000 power outages. And again, this is 1945. Some people didn't have power for days, and it's just amazing that you can get 5.4 inches of snow on May the 10th. Now, that was only superseded, I guess if you want to call it that, by another snowstorm, and this one actually occurred in 2002 on May the 18th. Kind of a typical nor'easter kind of a path with this storm. It developed in the Tennessee Valley. It moved up the coast, and just where that colder air and the storm kind of matured, it brought with it heavy snow to the elevations. 8 inches in Prattsville, Greene County, which is just outside of Albany. 6.5 inches in Schoharie County, which again kind of um, is right there near Albany County and just to the west in the elevations. But even at the airport, which is at a lower elevation in Albany, they got 2.2 inches of snow. And that again was on May 18th. Imagine getting that type of snow when you're thinking summer. That's just crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, again, we know, I know we have, I think there's a couple of other instances somewhere in New England where it snowed that late into May, but, it's almost just goes hand in hand with the earliest snows versus the late snows. But yeah, May 18th, no, I don't want that. I don't want accumulating snow that late.
Definitely not. I'm in beach mode, summer mode by then.
Yeah, you're in Taylor Swift concert mode then.
That's true. That will. I'm trying to think when I went 2 years ago. It was around there, right before Memorial Day. So.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But all right, well, that was a nice rendition for April Fool's Day. Yeah, you guys got anything else?
That's about it for me.
And looking ahead, yeah, we're gonna have our summer outlook shortly with Kyle Leahy. He'll have outlook for that. We'll have Steve Coppertino back here in a few episodes. Of course, hurricane season starts to get revisited, and we'll see what that's going to bring, and just heading into spring, and what we'll of course the big question is, we had that drought here in the Northeast going into the fall and really into the winter. Now we've gathered back some rain, and that's going to be a big question for Kyle. Are we going to start off with a dry spring again, which we don't want heading into summer, obviously, with forest fires and brush fires, and we all remember not only last year, but was it 2 years ago when we had the forest fires in Canada, right?
Oh, that was 2022.
2022, 3 years ago. Yeah, right.
No, that was 23. That
No,
was,
it's 23,
that was
right?
Right
Yeah.
after the Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, I do. Remember?
That's how I everything is based off of time since before and after Taylor.
Yeah. Now that was the dry Canada wildfires, and then we had the dry fall last year. But yeah, it's I just remember those smoky skies, and you go walk outside and you smell this. Well, it was disgusting.
Oh
Air
my God,
quality
that's
was.
horrible. My favorite part of that whole thing was, the neighborhood watch apps. Someone posting in there in around my neighborhood. Is someone barbecuing?
Oh my
Why
God,
does it smell
yeah.
so smoky? I'm like, oh my God. And the sky's like orange.
Yeah, I remember some of the
Yeah, it's
pictures in
like,
New York City.
is something on fire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, even if something on fire is better, but
Yeah, Western Canada's on fire.
yeah. Is someone barbecuing? I'm like, oh yeah, because every time someone barbecues in the summer, the sky turns orange.
Yeah. All right, well, that's about it then for today's episode. And be sure to subscribe to the Weather Lounge, and we'll notify you when a new podcast drops. And of course, you can follow us on all the big social media platforms. And of course, visit our website at weatherworksinc.com. Again, for Mike and Jen, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of the Weather Lounge podcast. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on all your favorite podcasting platforms so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have questions or comments? Just email us at weatherlounge@weatherworksinc.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can also learn more about our parent company, WeatherWorks, by visiting weatherworksinc.com and checking them out on social media as well. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, stay curious and stay weather-wise.